How many of you are ages 18 to 35? Well, this is a college campus after all. As you're probably aware, your generation, often called the millennial generation, has older generations who have a rather low opinion of you. You may have heard, you're lazy, for one thing. You don't care about working hard. You're selfish. You might even be narcissistic. You spend way too much time looking at your phones. Now that stereotype is actually true. I don't know what you're expecting to find there every minute and a half or so. But the other stereotypes, the real nasty negative stereotypes, selfish and lazy and so on, those are not true. And there are a lot of things about this generation that should be celebrated and haven't been acknowledged. Now, I'm a developmental psychologist, and I've been studying people in this age group for many years. And I've always been surprised at the vehemence of people in these older generations, the baby boomers, the parents of the millennial generation, and the silent generation, the grandparents of the current generation. Very negative. And what surprises me about it is that it just doesn't fit the evidence. That there's a lot of evidence that refutes these stereotypes, and a lot of evidence that supports that this is a generation that is extremely promising and already quite accomplished in many ways. So I think you need to push back. I think you need a manifesto. And it's not up to me to give the manifesto. What I plan to do today is just give you some raw material to write your own manifesto. I'm a baby boomer, so I can give you some raw material, but it's up to you to write it. Now, to provide you with that information, I'd like to play a game. And you're invited to play. In fact, it requires your participation. It's a game called Which Generation? And I think you'll get the hang of it quickly. So which generation is in fact the least selfish, as measured by the proportion who have volunteered their time in the last year for a cause they care about? That would be millennials. Now your part comes in, okay? You get the hang of it? Which generation is the least lazy, as defined by the highest proportion who are both working and going to school in their early 20s due to astronomical college tuition costs? That also would be millennials. Thank you, you're getting the hang of it. But there's more, there's a lot more. Which generation is the least racist, as measured by the proportion who were in favor of interracial and interethnic marriages, and who in fact have friendships and love relationships across those boundaries? That too is millennials. Which generation is the least sexist, as measured by the proportion who are in favor of women receiving equal pay for equal work, and in favor of men and women having equal responsibilities for child care and household work? That too would be millennials. All right, you're getting the hang of it. Which generation is the least homophobic, as measured by the proportion who are in favor of legalizing gay marriage and the proportion of heterosexuals who have friendships with gays and lesbians? That too would be millennials. See how much fun this is? Now, there's more to it even than that. That is a way of defending your generation against these many criticisms to which you are subject. But I also think that you should seriously think about turning the tables and making these other generations defend themselves. Because you're still young, and we don't know yet really how you'll do in the world. Your story is not yet written. That's one of the beautiful things about being young. We don't yet know how it will turn out. But we have a lot of evidence on how it's turned out for these two older generations, and it's not pretty. So let's play that game again with a slightly different twist. And I think you'll get the hang of it this time, too. Which generation has accumulated a $9 trillion national debt because they demanded benefits and services they were unwilling to pay for, and will now bequeath that $9 trillion debt to their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and so on? That would be not millennials. Which generation dominates a dysfunctional political system that is completely dominated by lying, cynical, corrupt ignoramuses? That too would be not millennials. Which generation has engaged in a decades-long orgy of overconsumption and poisoned the air and the water to the point where they've triggered massive climate change whose effects are not likely to be felt in their lifetime? That too would be not millennials. Now, the one complaint that I do have about your generation, other than the cell phone thing, is that you're too patient. You're too nice when you're being subject to these criticisms from your elders. I'm waiting for you to stand up and say to these baby boomers and these silent generation members, how dare you? How dare you dump on us this broken society, this chaotic world, this poisoned planet, sprinkle the whole stinking, steaming mess with insults, and then dump it in our lap to fix? Boy, that takes a lot of gall. So I think when they say to you condescendingly that you're not as likely to do as well as their generation did, your response should be, well, maybe not, but how could we do worse? Of course, bashing the young is an old tradition. It wasn't invented by your parents' and grandparents' generation. It's been going around for a long time. In fact, as far back as we have recording human history, we have complaints about the young. But there are certain old traditions that don't deserve to be maintained. Sexism and racism and homophobia are among them, right? Despising the young is the last acceptable prejudice. It's time we retired that one too. Thank you. Thank you. It's up to you.